Welcome to Cheat Sheet Tales, where secrets slip, lies unravel, and the truth always has a twist. Real stories, raw confessions, shocking betrayals. Drop a comment if you've ever caught a red flag too late. Now, let's get into today's tale. My daughter-in-law told me I wasn't allowed to hold the baby without certification. When I asked what that meant, she said, "You need to take a parenting class. You're too outdated." My son just stared at the floor. I took the class, and then took something from them they never thought I would. My name's Linda. I'm 62, living in Topeka, Kansas. And I always thought of myself as a reasonable woman. I raised my son Evan as a single mom after my husband passed away in a car accident when Evan was only 8. I worked 2 jobs, put food on the table, kept a roof over our heads, and did my best to raise him right. We were close, or so I thought. Evan met Natalie about 5 years ago. At first, I was happy for him. She seemed fine, a little too polished maybe. The kind of woman who talks with that sugary, sweet voice, but has eyes like a shark. You know the type. She came from some well-off family in the suburbs of Kansas City, the kind that thinks they know everything, but I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt. If Evan loved her, I figured I could learn to love her too. But after they got married, things shifted. Subtle at first. When I came over, I wasn't allowed to bring food unless it was organic. When I suggested we all have a family dinner, Natalie would find a reason to say no. She always had this tight little smile, like I was something unpleasant she had to tolerate. Evan would just sit there quiet, like he didn't have an opinion. That hurt. But I told myself it wasn't worth a fight. Then came Chloe, my first grandchild. My heart just about burst when I heard they were having a baby. I went all out, knitting blankets, buying little onesies, planning to spoil that baby rotten. I dreamed about the day I'd hold her, rock her, sing her the lullabies I sang to Evan when he was little. But when Chloe was born, it was like I'd been erased. I showed up at their house the day they brought Chloe home. I had a stuffed animal, a little giraffe I thought was cute, and the blanket I crocheted. When I walked in, Natalie barely looked at me. She was holding Chloe, and when I reached out and asked, "Can I hold her?" she gave me this fake smile and said, "Actually, we're not comfortable with that yet." I blinked. "What do you mean?" She smiled tighter. "We've decided anyone who wants to hold Chloe needs to take a parenting class first. Things have changed since you raised Evan. There are new guidelines. You're a little outdated." I just stared at her, stunned. I thought she was joking, but then Evan wouldn't even look at me. He was staring at the floor like a scolded child. I asked, "Evan, are you serious?" He mumbled, "It's just a precaution, Mom. It's not personal." Not personal? I felt like I'd been slapped in the face. I left that day, humiliated, angry, and heartbroken. I cried the whole way home. I raised Evan. I kept him safe, fed, loved, and now I wasn't qualified to hold my own granddaughter? But it wasn't over. Natalie texted me later that week with a list of requirements if I wanted to be part of Chloe's life. The parenting class was just the start. I couldn't buy toys unless they were non-toxic and ethically sourced. Couldn't post photos of Chloe on social media. I couldn't give her any food without Natalie's approval. And when I told her I'd always rocked Evan to sleep, she said, "That's actually discouraged now. It creates sleep associations." I felt like I was in some twisted control game. And Evan, he just kept his head down, letting Natalie call the shots. It was like he was a stranger to me. I tried to fight it. I told Evan I was his mother. I reminded him how I raised him, how much I loved him, but every time I brought it up, he'd say, "Natalie has strong opinions about parenting. It's just easier if we follow her lead." So I swallowed my pride. I signed up for the stupid online parenting class Natalie sent me. I watched hours of videos on infant sleep science and gentle parenting and feeding solids, the Montessori way. I took quizzes. I even printed out the certificate, feeling like a damn fool. When I showed up at their house the next time, certificate in hand, I thought, surely now they'll let me hold her. But no. Natalie glanced at the paper, barely looked at it, and said, "Well, that's a good start." But we're still not ready for visitors to hold Chloe yet. We're following the 4th trimester bonding model. It's best if just the parents hold her. For now, I stared at her, speechless. Evan was sitting on the couch, and he wouldn't even look at me. My own son, too weak to stand up for me. I left that day feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. I cried harder than I have in years. I wasn't just losing time with my granddaughter. I was losing Evan, but something shifted in me after that. I stopped crying. I stopped waiting. I started planning. I wasn't going to let Natalie control me. I wasn't going to let her push me out of my own family. If Evan wasn't going to fight for me, I'd fight for myself. And when the opportunity came, I took it. It happened when Evan and Natalie had to go to a conference out of town. They left Chloe with their nanny, Talia, a sweet girl who honestly looked like she was drowning. I knew from talking to her in passing that she felt overwhelmed, that Natalie's rules were crushing her. I also knew that she didn't have family nearby, and that she trusted me, at least a little. So I called her up the day they left and asked if I could bring her lunch. She sounded so relieved, like she really needed a break. I showed up with sandwiches, and after we ate, I offered to watch Chloe while she took a nap. Talia hesitated, but she eventually agreed. The second she left the room, I picked up Chloe and held her tight against my chest. I whispered, "It's okay, baby girl. Grandma's here." I felt this wave of love and sadness crash over me, and I knew I couldn't let Natalie keep me away anymore. That's when I made the decision. I packed a little diaper bag, wrapped Chloe in her blanket, and I took her home with me. I texted Evan right away. "Chloe is safe at my house. You and Natalie need to come here to talk. No more games, no more humiliation." They didn't respond for hours. Hours. I imagined the storm brewing in their house. Natalie pacing like a lion in a cage, Evan probably pale and panicked. I half expected the police to show up at my door, but I didn't care. Let them try. I wasn't backing down. When they finally arrived that night, Natalie was a tornado. Furious, yelling, demanding I hand Chloe over immediately. Evan just stood there, looking trapped, like a man caught between two fires. I stood, firm, holding Chloe close. I said, "I am family too. You don't get to treat me like a stranger. You don't get to decide I'm not good enough." Natalie snapped, "You're unstable. You're not safe." I stared her down and said, "I raised Evan without help, without money, without books or classes, and I did a damn good job." Evan looked like he wanted to crawl out of his skin, but for once, he didn't stay silent. He finally spoke, voice low. "Mom, I'm sorry." That one sentence broke Natalie's hold. She whipped around furious and said, "You're siding with her?" Evan looked at me, looked at his daughter in my arms, and then finally looked back at Natalie. "I'm tired, Natalie. I'm tired of all the rules. I'm tired of being scared to make a mistake, and I'm tired of pretending like my mom doesn't matter." Natalie's mouth dropped open. She was stunned. I didn't gloat. I didn't say I told you so. I just stood there, rocking Chloe gently in my arms, and let the silence fill the room. That's where things stand right now. They took Chloe back that night, but something changed. Evan's been texting me more. He came by last week, alone, to ask if I'd like to come over and help with Chloe. Natalie hasn't spoken to me directly, but I see the cracks forming. I'm not done yet. Not by a long shot. They think they can push me aside, erase me from my granddaughter's life. They have no idea who they're dealing with. After that night, things didn't go back to normal, not even close. Natalie was colder than ever. If she was an iceberg before, now she was Antarctica, icy, distant, and ready to freeze me out entirely. Evan started texting me more, but it was always cautious, like he was sneaking behind enemy lines. He'd send me little updates about Chloe. She rolled over today, or she's teething now. But every time I asked when I could see her, he'd go quiet. A few days later, Natalie would post some carefully curated photo of Chloe on her Instagram, tagging all her mom friends, acting like the perfect parent. It felt like a slow war. Then came Chloe's 6-month birthday. Natalie planned a little party at their house, just family and a few of their friends. Evan called me the week before and invited me, but his voice was tight, nervous. He said Natalie had conditions. When I asked what that meant, he hesitated. Then he sighed and said, "She doesn't want you holding Chloe during the party." I nearly dropped the phone. "She still thinks I can't hold my own granddaughter?" I asked, my voice cracking. Evan tried to smooth it over. "It's just Eric is worried about germs, you know. RSV season, flu season." I cut him off. "Evan, I'm vaccinated. I've done everything you've asked. When is this going to stop?" He went silent. Again. That awful silence I'd come to hate. I showed up at the party anyway, bringing a little stuffed bear and a card. The whole house was decorated like something out of a Pinterest board. White balloons, pastel streamers, little glass jars of organic snacks. Natalie had this look on her face, tight-lipped and fake-friendly, like I was an unwanted guest she couldn't kick out. I sat through the party, watching as Natalie's parents, Gregory and Elaine, held Chloe, kissed her, cooed over her. No rules for them, apparently. They were special. When I reached for Chloe once, just once, Natalie swooped in like a hawk and said, "Oh, let me take her, she's getting fussy." It was humiliating. And Evan? He didn't say a word. That night, I went home and stared at the photos. Natalie posted online, her parents beaming with Chloe, holding her close, while I sat in the corner like a stranger. My heart burned. I felt like I was losing my family piece by piece, so I did something I never thought I'd do. I started keeping track. I took screenshots of Natalie's posts, of her parents holding Chloe, of Chloe in crowded places without masks, of Chloe playing on the floor with other kids. Every time Natalie said germs or rules, I had a little file of evidence that the rules only applied to me. Then I did something else. I started talking to Talia, the nanny, more. Quietly. Over coffee. She confided in me that Natalie was impossible, that she felt trapped, that she wanted to quit, but she needed the paycheck. And then Talia told me something that nearly made my blood boil. She said that sometimes when Evan was at work and Natalie had to run errands, Natalie would leave Chloe with Elaine, her mom, without. A word to Evan. No contracts, no parenting classes, no rules, just drop her off and go. But when I offered to babysit, nope. I wasn't certified. That's when I knew. I wasn't just being excluded. I was being punished, controlled, so I made a choice. One afternoon, I showed up at Evan's work. I walked right into his office and sat down across from him. He looked shocked, like I'd walked in naked or something. I didn't waste time. I said, "Evan, you need to listen to me. I know Eric is leaving Chloe with her mother. I know I'm being singled out, and I'm not going to sit quietly anymore. Either you stand up for me or you'll lose me completely. I'm done being the punching bag in your marriage." Evan looked pale. He stammered, "How do you know?" I cut him off. "Don't bother lying," Talia told me. He sank into his chair, rubbing, his face like a man who was realizing the ground under him was crumbling. "I'm your mother, Evan. I raised you. I love you. And I love Chloe. But I will not let Natalie erase me from this family." He sat there, speechless, while I stood up and left. The next day, Natalie sent me a cold, formal text. "We've decided it's best for our family if we take a step. Back from visits for now. We hope you understand." I didn't reply. Instead, I printed every screenshot, every message, every photo of Chloe with Natalie's parents, and I put them in a folder labeled Family Evidence, and then I made an appointment. With a lawyer? Because if they thought they could push me out quietly, they were dead wrong. The day I sat down in that lawyer's office, something in me snapped into place. I wasn't going to be a doormat anymore. I'd been a good mother, a good grandmother, and they treated me like I was disposable. Not anymore. I laid everything out to my lawyer, every text, every screenshot, every picture. I showed him how Natalie and her family were playing favorites, how I was being unfairly cut out of Chloe's life for no reason. My lawyer leaned back in his chair, tapped, his pen on the desk, and said, "You know, this could qualify for grandparents' rights, especially since they're letting other family members babysit, but not you." I hadn't even thought about that. The idea of taking legal action against my own son made my stomach turn. But what choice did I have? They left me no other option. So I did it. I filed for court-ordered visitation with Chloe under Kansas grandparents' rights laws. When Evan got served, he called me in a panic. I could hear the fear in his voice. "Mom, what are you doing?" I was calm, steady. I said, "I'm standing up for myself, Evan, for Chloe, for our family. You've let Natalie control everything for too long. I'm done asking. I'm done being treated like I don't matter." He tried to argue, tried to say this wasn't the way to solve it. But I cut him off. "If you had spoken up for me, if you had been a man and defended your mother, I wouldn't have had to do this. But you didn't. So now the court will decide." The court process took months. Natalie was furious. Her lawyer tried to argue that I wasn't a safe presence in Chloe's life, that I was unstable. But I had all the evidence. Pictures of Elaine and Gregory holding Chloe, no masks, no rules, while I was told I couldn't even touch her. Natalie's hypocrisy was laid bare for everyone to see. The judge saw right through it. He ruled in my favor, granting me weekly unsupervised visitation with Chloe. Natalie looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. Evan sat there, shoulders slumped, like a man who'd finally realized what he'd let happen. But the fallout wasn't over. A few weeks after the ruling, I got a call from Talia, the nanny. She was quitting. Turns out Natalie had been so angry over the court case that she'd taken it out on Talia, giving her impossible tasks, criticizing everything, and blaming her for not keeping me in line. But Talia didn't just quit quietly. Oh no! She filed a formal complaint with the state, alleging that Natalie had left Chloe alone, multiple times, without proper supervision, which was technically neglect under Kansas law. She also gave me a heads up that she'd spoken to Evan about everything, how Natalie would belittle him, how she'd cut him off from friends, how she controlled every little thing he did as a father. Evan, bless his heart, finally cracked. He showed up at my house one night, standing on the porch in the dark, holding a duffel bag. His eyes were red-rimmed, like he hadn't slept in days. "I left her," he said, voice breaking. "I couldn't do it anymore, Mom. I'm sorry for everything." I just opened my arms, and he collapsed into me, sobbing like the little boy I used to know. Turns out Evan had been miserable for years. Natalie's constant rules, her coldness, her manipulation, it had worn him down to nothing. And when she lost control, when the court ruled in my favor, when Talia's report landed in her lap, it all came crashing down. Evan filed for divorce, and guess who got primary custody of Chloe? Evan did. With Natalie's history of controlling behavior, documented neglect reports, and the court siding in my favor for visitation, the judge ruled that Evan was the more stable parent. Natalie tried to fight it, but she didn't have a leg to stand on. It was like watching a house of cards collapse. Natalie's family, Gregory and Elaine, tried to step in, tried to shame Evan for leaving, but he finally found his spine. He told them off. Said they'd been enabling Natalie's behavior for years, and that they weren't welcome at his house until they respected his family, including me. The first weekend Evan had full custody of Chloe, he called me and asked if I'd like to come over and hold my granddaughter. No strings, no rules, no paperwork. I sat in his living room, rocking Chloe in my arms, her little hand clutching my finger, while Evan sat across from me, looking tired but relieved, like a man who'd finally broken free. And as for Natalie, last I heard, she moved back in with her parents. She lost most of her mom friends when word got out about the court case and the neglect report. Apparently they didn't like the idea of being associated with someone who'd been caught leaving a 6-month-old alone while running errands. Karma is a funny thing. As for me, I get to see Chloe every week now. We play, we read, we laugh. I'm making up for lost time. And Evan, he's healing. We're healing. Natalie tried to tear our family apart. She almost did. But in the end, it was her own arrogance, her own control, Her own obsession with being right, that destroyed her. I didn't just take Chloe back. I took my family back, and I don't regret a damn.